compliance. In that context, are you disappointed? What's going on at UNC?
Anytime one of our schools has an NCAA problem, wherever it is and whichever one it is, I'm disappointed and concerned because that's not who we are as a league. And you know, when you have those kinds of problems, Joe, I don't, you know, you don't step back from what your cornerstones are and what you're all about. You try to fix it and move forward. And you know, when you have exceptions that are problems, exceptions to what the league has developed over the years as a norm in terms of how things should be done, and one family member or another periodically falls out of line with that, whether it be academics or an NCAA violation of another kind. I think that's one of the beauties of being in a league together, because there's a certain collective expectation that certainly is there at the institutional level as well, that you have to look at and reevaluate and recommit to the appropriate values that you want and have displayed throughout the league in the past.
Commissioner, if the conference has moved forward on this legislation, it's clear from last week in Birmingham that you will get a significant amount of pushback from the coaches. Coaches made it very clear they do not like the idea of multi-year scholarships. They do not like the idea of increased academic standards. They don't think it's fair. I think the question a lot of us have is whether or not at the presidential level, at the conference level, at the athletic director level, if you folks are going to be strong enough to handle the pushback you're going to get from your coaches.
Well, that remains to be seen, Tony, and it's a good question. And I've always, throughout my career, I think I've been one that has, I find it very important to listen to coaches in many ways, because they're on the firing line. They live some parts of our enterprise day to day that I don't personally live day to day. So I think their input is important, and I understand, you know, why coaches would be opposed to, particularly, you know, multi-year scholarships, because it takes away some flexibility probably in their world to a degree. But you know, presidents and athletic directors and commissioners are really charged with looking at all this in a global sense. And when there are tough choices to be made and changes that need to come, there's going to be pushback from certain elements of it. I mean, that's just human nature. I would expect that. In my remarks, I referenced the collective will of the presidents, if you will, at this retreat that is upcoming. And because I think it will take, not just at this retreat, I mean, it's sort of a beginning to a dialogue that will go on for a while, I think. But there's got to be a collective will for change, significant change, if you know, if it's going to happen. And change that is significant and meaningful often comes with some pain. And you know, I don't, a couple of things I've put out there today in terms of compliance, in terms of the full cost of attendance as a scholarship, and to a lesser degree the idea of looking at the scholarship. We may look at it and everybody agree, you know, we're right where we should be. I'm not to a point where I can tell you I think we should change the one-year scholarship. Let me make that plain. But I think we need to look at it as we look at the scholarship itself, because I think those are issues that hit to the heart of the student athlete. And I think we need to really focus on student athlete welfare at this point and see if we're doing the right things for the world we're now living in.
To the cost of attendance with the grants. In your mind, is that a fairness issue because of the escalating salaries of coaches and rights fees for conferences, or is it an economic one for the student athletes? And do you sense that they are somehow impoverished and don't have the proper access to Pell Grants and the special assistance funds?
David, I think it's some, and from my perspective, it's some of both. I think there's a certain fairness issue relative to the world we live in, to those athletes. I don't know, when you factor in access to the Pell Grants and you factor in the Student Athlete Assistance Fund, I don't know how many impoverished athletes there are out there, but I think there probably still are some. And you could take those monies and you could factor it in to a scholarship that is based on full cost of attendance and simplify it, if you will, because everybody would, in essence, be on the same page. And if I were an AD, that would, and I hear full cost of attendance, red flag's going to go up. I'll probably get a few calls from my ADs tonight. But if it's the right thing to do, we need to really seriously consider that. And in reality, if you're, and it'll cost, they may have to put a cap on it so it's, it involves travel. And so if a kid in Norfolk is considering going to UVA or Virginia Tech or UCLA or Southern Cal, you want him to understand you're really not getting more money. It's a travel kind of thing, but you may need to have a cap if you went in that direction. I don't know. That's one of the things you need to drill down on, I think. But I think both of the issues that you bring up are factors.
For as long as I can remember, compliance and improvement in academics have been issues dating back to SMU getting the death penalty and Prop 48 and all the other so-called reforms in the 90s. What makes you think that it can be any more successful now than it has in the past?
Well, I think, you mentioned something with, I suspect we were at a tipping point as well from a compliance standpoint with the only death penalty that went into effect with SMU when that happened. But, I guess my answer to that is that somewhat what I said earlier, in the sense that when you have something special like intercollegiate athletics and it's going through a period of having these kinds of problems and getting bashed and I would have to say in ways appropriately so over an extended period of time, and you want it to continue and you want it to get better, then you've got to address it. When you have something that's as public, as emotional, as competitive, and is a human endeavor, like we have in intercollegiate athletics, there are going to be problems. We're not going to eliminate all the problems because we're human beings, and human beings are going to make bad choices sometimes. But we need to do everything we can do systemically to minimize the opportunity to make those bad choices and to encourage people not to make those bad choices. And when those bad choices are made, quite honestly, to have the risk of doing so needs to be that, hey, I'm not taking that risk. It's not worth it. And I'm not sure we've done that, either on an individual basis or, from an institutional basis. So, I don't want to get out of balance here in terms of giving you the impression that I think everybody's head should be cut off, because that's not what I mean. But I am for tough ramifications of rule breakers. I am for consistency and how that's applied from case to case. I am for expediency. And I am for simplicity, so that people can understand what's going on, how it's going on, and understand and see the consistency from case to case to case. And I think we've got some work to do with that. And you can't legislate individuals' integrity. And human beings are sometimes going to have lapses of integrity. To think otherwise would be, naive. We've just got to find ways to minimize that and ways to deal with it appropriately when it happens. Thank you. If there's anything we can do for you during the next day or so, let